Hello and welcome back. So normally when you click to add a file, let's say I add this file there, it doesn't show here. Even though if we had that thing display, it would just show the file name of the file that we've added. So what I want here is for me to see both. I want to see the file name somewhere here, or selected file, and then I want to see the image here. So let's put some text over this side. So what I will do is, let's go for this is the image tag, right? So there's an image here, and we want to also, and then there's a div here. So what I want to do is add to this. So I'll add a div around this so I can add a file name as well. So I'll put this together like that, push that in, and also I want another div inside that will contain some text. So I'll add a class here that I'll use with JavaScript. So I'll put the JS prefix just for me to know what classes I use for JavaScript. So I'll say JS file name like this. That's what I'll call it. So in here I'll say selected file and then say none. Okay, just so for now we can see what's going on there. And I will refresh. And there we go, the selected file is down here, but I want it over here because there's a lot of space there. So what I'll do is on this side, I'll use a class from Bootstrap that's deflex, which is just the same as using styles and saying display flex. So it goes this way, which is much better. And let me add some margins to it so that there's a bit of space between the two. So I'll put margin there. Okay, it doesn't seem to obey that at all. Oh, that's because I've added it to the wrong thing. I need to add the margin here. So let me just drag and drop this here. There we go. That should do the trick. Oh, I should fix this annoying thing. Anyway, so selected file, nothing. So now what I want is when I select a file for it to write the selected file name and then also change the image. So let's start by just changing the file name, okay? Excuse me more. My flu is getting worse. Okay, so we go to the file input, and this is the one right here. So I want to add an event listener for JavaScript here. So because we can only do this in JavaScript and we can't use PHP, because remember that by the time PHP gets to the browser, by the time your page is in the browser, there is no PHP left there because the PHP acts on the server side. So when a user loads your page, they only have HTML in that page, no PHP whatsoever. So you can't use PHP to do things like this. You have to let JavaScript take over because it runs in the browser. So here we'll add an on-click listener, and then we'll create a function in JavaScript to run this. So this one, we can call it load image. Of course, you can call this function anything you want. It doesn't really matter. But I want to supply something to this function. So what I want to give it is the file that was loaded. So it's not on the click actually, because when the user clicks, they haven't actually selected a file yet. So let's put this on the on change so that when the contents of this input change, then we know something new has been added, then we can do something. Then I want to send the files. Now this input has a property called files. Okay, now files is an array. So the first item that you add, because you can add multiple files in one input, this is why the files attribute is an array, because you can add several files. But we know that the first file is always files 0. So we want to get whatever is in files 0 and send it through this function. But we need to tell it where this file 0 is coming from. It's coming from this element right here, right? So we must specify that this dot files 0 is what we want. So the first item you have selected in there. So even if we select 10 files, only the first one will be taken. If we want to get all the files, we can remove this, and this will send all files that have been added to this input. but we don't want to do that. So let's create a function now that will respond when we do this. Okay. And the second thing, before we go even further here, I need to be able to grab this image tag. So what I'll do is I will create a class here as well so I can grab it. I will say JS because it's for JS. I'll call this one image preview. Okay, so one is called file name, the other one is image preview. That's good. So let's go to the very bottom here and try to add some let's add some script tags, shall we? So we can add some JavaScript. Okay, there we go. So we have script tags, meaning we can add functions now. So we add functions because we don't want this code to run immediately we load the page. We need to call the function. That's why we're creating a function. And here we are sending through a file. So I'm just going to call it file and grab it from there. File will come with its own attributes, the file name, the file itself, and I don't know what else. Let's see. Let's show the file name first of all. So I'm going to go through the document and do a query selector. This is how we select elements. So query selector, and then I've named it JS file name. So by doing that, I have grabbed this item, but I haven't saved it to anything because I don't really need it for much. I just need to put the file name. So all I'm going to do is do that and then say dot inner HTML. So the HTML of that file name div, JS file name, we want to change it to selected file. That will be the text in there. But then we add to it the actual selected file. So I'm going to put a space there, and the file name will be inside file.name. That's where it's going to be, in the property of this file that we've sent. It's as simple as that. So once we do that, it should work. So let's come back here and give it a shot, shall we? So go here, and we have that problem because in the let me use this to find what I'm looking for. Find. Okay, there we go. It's because it added a bracket here for some reason. Okay, so let's refresh, come back, and selected file none. But if I select a file here right now, it should show me, you see there, selected file, that's the name of the file. But I want to see it here. So I will also do the other thing, which is grab another item. So I'll duplicate this line. Okay. But first, before I give it this other file is, wait a minute, what did you call it? Image preview, right? There we go. So this one is the image tag. So image tag has an attribute for source. So we're going to say image tag.source is equal to, and then let's give it a valid source. So here I'm tempted to say file.filename, but that won't work because every file name that we add to an image tag is going to search for it on the server and not on your local, the machine of the person that's doing the input, right? So every image, this image you see here is from the server, in the same location where this page comes from. That's how these things work. So if I want to show an image that's on the user's local machine, that's different. So if I do that, you see it just disappears because it can't find that file on the server. So we have to tell it to create a local resource. So I'm going to say this. I'm going to say var my link. Let's create a link to a local resource. So what we would do is we're going to use a function called, what is this function called? Object create URL. It looks something like this, but I've actually forgotten what it is. So not to fear because we have internet, yes? So just type and search for JS create object URL or something like that. So it's going to show you, there it is, create object URL. So I was right. So it comes from the URL object, not window. So we can say window.url.object create URL. Like this. Okay, so this creates a link to an object. So it gets a binary data. Like in this case, we have binary data that represents an image. So it's going to create a link to that binary data. And so my link will be equal to that. But we need to tell it where to get that blob file. It's inside file. This will create us a link which we can send to the source of the image. And that's it, really. So let's try this out. And I refresh. Let's click and come on. Nothing. That's weird. Let's try a different image. So here everything shows fine, but not here. So usually when there's an error, just inspect the console and you usually find an error. So it says this is not a function. So that's what it's telling me. But wait a minute. Create object URL. That's URL. It looks pretty similar, right? So the static method creates a string containing a URL representing the object given in the parameter. Okay, so things should be working, yes. Let's remove window. Maybe that's the problem because everything is inside window anyway. So let's leave it like that and let's try again. Let's see if we're going to see an error instead. Okay, so we see an error again and it says object create URL is not a function. So that wasn't the problem at all. So it's me messing up this. It's not supposed to be object create, it's supposed to be create object URL. Sorry about this. I see certain words and I just mix them up. Okay, so it's supposed to be like that. That's the real function name. So I can close this because now I'm confident that things will work. So let's click there and open, and there we go. So the thing shows us that. But you see, images have different shapes and sizes, so I would rather we show a square image of all these. Let's see this tall one. So this one goes like this instead. So I want the image to remain square. So what I would do is I'll go to the image tag itself. I don't know what width this is right now, but what we can do is let's add a style. Let's add a style at the end here. So in the style, I'll say width. Let me give it a specific width of maybe 150 pixels. Let's see how well that looks. Didn't change anything, so maybe we were at 150. Let me try 250 width. Doesn't change anything. That's unexpected. I think it's because of the flex maybe. So maybe what I can do is what to do here. We can use the flex. Let me put flex 2 instead of, I think the default is 1. Let's see how that works. No, doesn't change anything. Okay, what we'll do is I'll leave it at 200 pixels and then put the height as well at 200 pixels. Okay, then I'll put object fit and put it at cover. This is what will make sure the image is a square. So refresh, let's go back, and this is what we get. So it doesn't look very square. So it seems the the width is controlled but not the height. So width is controlled from somewhere else. That's why it's like that. So what I can do is I can inspect this element and then try to see. It says max width 120 pixels. So this is the problem. So if I do that, you see things are a little bit better. So let's change that guy. So I'm going to say max width, put it at 200 pixel. Pretty good. So now we have something bigger. And if I click and there, I get a square image. Very nice. So regardless the dimensions here now, we get a square image. Oh, is it? Well, pretty much, more or less, I guess. Let's see this one. Okay, so the other one has max width, but it doesn't say width, right? So what I'll do is I'll say width and then put max width as well there. So it's the styles from Bootstrap that are interfering, so that's why things are weird. But now it should work if I load this one, and there we go, square image. Okay, so very nice. Now the image loads very well. All we need to do now is, oh, how is this one? This should float to the other side. All we need to do now is submit this form and we'll be good to go. Now, in order to submit the form, we will need this one. Let me copy the float end and just put float start here so that it goes to the other side. What we need now is to put names. Make sure there's a name on each input, and it seems there actually is. So this is very good. Okay, great. So we are ready to make a submission from this.